There it is, the famous Devil's Tower, one of the most unique geological formations in North America, found way up in northeast Wyoming. Many of us are familiar with it from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's where the aliens make contact with the American government. It's a very cool movie, and this big rock is a very cool thing indeed to behold, even from this road driving past it. It's one of those things we've seen thousands of times in pictures, like Mount Rushmore, for example. But you simply have to see these things close up with your own eyes to really appreciate its magnificence and splendor, and also to be humbled by your own smallness. I mean, this formation is just too large to capture in pictures or paintings or even movies. It's jaw-dropping. It's almost alien in scope and design. And since the very first time human beings ever laid their eyes on this structure, they wondered, how the hell did this thing get here? I mean, just look at it. It's the only one of its kind anywhere to be seen. Did it come from outer space? Did some force push this thing up from the depths of Hades? There has to be some sort of rational explanation for how this giant rock got to be here, in the middle of nowhere. And of course, there are many stories. Let's explore two of them and see if we can't get to the bottom or the top of this mystery, if you prefer. Can we arrive at the truth about how it got here, or must its origin be forever lost to us? Let's first turn to the realm of myth for an explanation. How does myth explain the origins of Devil's Tower? The National Park Service tells us there are dozens of Native American Indian stories that explain how the tower was formed. They are all different, the setup or the details, but almost all of the Native American Indian stories feature a very large bear in the story, which of course is only natural as this is bear country after all. Some of the stories involve 5 girls, or 7 girls, or a wife of a warrior. All the stories involve some version of the rock suddenly rising up and growing out of the ground to protect the innocent girls, or the warrior, or the woman from a giant bear. And I remember when I was there, as I read about the giant bear story and looked up at the giant tower, I could easily believe the story. I mean, yeah, a giant bear could easily explain the rock formation and also the claw marks all along the rock's walls. Sure looks like the work of some big bear to me. 100%. I could imagine this great big bear trying to reach those innocent Indians up there. And Devil's Tower is what keeps them safe beyond the bear's massive claws. As a story, it makes total sense to me. And quite frankly, it's a story anyone, any child or adult can easily accept as being true without too much difficulty. Now let's look at another story. What is the story science tells us about Devil's Tower? Well, their story is far different. It's very scientific-y and requires us to believe this rock formation was the result of a giant underground lava bulge that solidified into the giant columns of rock we see today. According to geologists, the rock has always been there. It was just buried under layers and layers of sedimentary rock. Slowly, over the course of millions of years of erosion, the sediments were removed to expose the rock column underneath. Of course, this story isn't quite as dramatic as the giant bear story. No, it's actually quite boring and, how shall we put it? Uninspiring. But this is what science says is more likely than not the truth behind how the Devil's Tower came into being. I find the scientific explanation plausible and probably truer, but also quite boring and very, very uninspiring. It's also very tempting to imagine that both versions are wrong, but rather the tower was pushed up from the center of Earth, and that it will continue to rise higher and higher, or start sinking again. Who knows? Nobody knows. I mean, that story is also probably nonsense. So forget I ever said that, but at least it's not as boring as the scientific story. And I think that's what we as human beings really want. You know, an inspiring story. Nature isn't a machine. It's a living thing with creatures in it that give it mystery and awe. The Native American Indian explanation is infused with mystery, reverence for nature, and stands in awe of its greatness. The scientific explanation completely demystifies the world and explains, but does not inspire. And so explanations are for science, myths are for inspiration, which is why we'd rather believe Devil's Tower was made by a giant bear, or is the secret landing base for some alien civilization, than the mere work of erosion and millions of years of wind and rain that can explain such an amazing thing like this big rock in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, US of A. But both stories can't be true. One explanation must be true and the other must be false. Or perhaps it is better to ask which explanation is more probable than the other. So which story do you believe best explains the origin of Devil's Tower? The bear or the wind and the rain? Let me know in the comments below. And perhaps that is why the Native American Indian story, even if it's not, true, is at least more interesting, inspiring, and simply makes for a better campfire story. And if you ever find yourself in northeastern Wyoming, do stop and visit this amazing rock, and also Mount Rushmore, which is nearby in South Dakota. Both are perfect examples of how nature gives rise to the stories and myths we tell about ourselves, about nature, and this amazing, fascinating world we live in. Don't forget to subscribe if you've made it this far, and see you next time on Pre Medina TV.